Fairfield, September 14th, 1692. Bill exhibited against Elizabeth Clausen, wife of Stephen Clausen. Elizabeth Clausen is complained of and accused of guilty of witchcraft. Oh my gosh. My 10 times great-grandmother was accused of being a witch?
Well, I'm excited to let you know that we do have a lot of information about your 10 times great-grandparents.
Fantastic. Good. What do we have?
This is a court record.
Oh, wow.
It's a print.
You're okay. Fairfield, September 14th, 1692. Bill exhibited against Elizabeth Clausen, wife of Stephen Clausen. Elizabeth Clausen is complained of and accused of guilty of witchcraft. Oh my gosh. My 10 times great-grandmother was accused of being a witch?
Yeah.
Was it this exact same time that Salem and everything was going off?
You notice the date at the top of the document.
1692.
That's
was
right.
That when
That's
the
the
Salem
year
witch trials?
of the Salem witch trials. There is the outbreak in Salem. There's only one other outbreak of witchcraft.
And that's
it's here.
Oh my gosh, that's so insane.
So witchcraft is something that one can be accused of without any physical evidence, without anybody physically witnessing you doing something.
They just kind of have a sense of it?
They believe that they're being afflicted by somebody from afar.
So she's accused of witchcraft. Is that enough to actually get my 10 times great-grandmother executed?
Well, witchcraft is a capital crime, and capital crimes need two pieces of evidence, two kinds of corroboration in order to convict.
Okay.
So the testimony given against her was one piece of evidence?
Yes, but it's not entirely sufficient.
It's not entirely sufficient, okay. Yeah. When Elizabeth Clausen was bound hand and foot and put into the water, she swam like a cork, and one Joseph Sturg labored to pry her into the water, and she buoyed up like a cork. They bound her and put her in the water
yes.
to determine whether or not she was a witch? This was an actual practice?
Right. This is what's called ducking the witch or swimming the witch. The belief was that a witch would not sink and drown, but that she would float.
Like any human body?
Like any human body, exactly.
Why were they thinking that a witch would float but somebody else wouldn't?
It had to do with belief in the baptismal qualities of water, that water's a pure element, and that water would reject a body that is
like almost like oil in water.
Yes.
Like you can't be surrounded in the baptismal water.
But a pure, good-hearted Christian. So just out here, that is the remains of the pond where we believe that your ancestor was ducked.
Yeah. What? It's always difficult to try and put yourself into somebody else's shoes. But 1692, my 10 times great-grandmother gets thrown into this pond with her hands and feet bound into one another. She knows the gravity of the situation. She understands what happens to someone who's accused of and convicted of being a witch. I mean, that's death. I would imagine she was scared and angry and confused. I mean, yesterday was intense. But what I'm hoping is that, we're gonna find out what ultimately happened to her.
We have an interesting document for you to take a look at today.
This is the original document?
This is the original document.
Oh, wow. So this is written June 4th, 1692. This is crazy. So clearly this is signed by a lot of people, that I can tell. A neighbor, Stephen Clausen, and so talking about my 10 times great-grandfather, having desired us whose names are underwritten, so all of these names.
Right.
Seeing there is such a rapport of his wife raised by some among us, we do declare that since we have known our said neighbor, good wife Clayson, we have not known her to act maliciously toward her neighbors, but hath been civil and orderly towards others in her conversation, and not to be a busybody in other men's concerns. So this is coming to her defense.
Yeah, look at all the names on there.
That's a lot.
There's 76 people who signed this petition or left their mark on it.
Oh, wow. And that's not a very large town.
Yeah, and the community in supporting Elizabeth Clausen was undertaking something of a risk
Yeah.
because of the fear of guilt by association to defend an accused witch. And Stephen certainly was taking a risk in soliciting support for his wife. We've seen in both England and in New England whereby husbands get accused of witchcraft when trying to defend their wives of the
Gotcha.
accusation of witchcraft. So he did something that is very unusual and very brave.
Wow. Well, that's a really good thing to hear, that a man in my family tree was acting courageously and selflessly, because unfortunately a lot of that was not necessarily the case in some of the branches of my mother's side. Do we know what ultimately happened with my 10 times great-grandmother, Elizabeth?
By the time she goes to trial, there have been 11 people executed for witchcraft in Salem.
Wow.
And then by the time of the outcome of her trial, 19 of the people in Salem who are accused of witchcraft are dead.
Wow. Wow.
Would you like to see the outcome?
Yeah, let's go to the next. The indictment of Elizabeth Clausen. To find Elizabeth Clausen,
The prisoner.
prisoner. Not guilty.
guilty.
Not guilty. Not guilty. Oh, man. Oh, my gosh. I was really hoping for that. That's great news. That's really great news.
Your ancestors were a part of a very significant witchcraft trial because of the acquittal. But I think your ancestor Stephen's decision to solicit neighborhood support, this probably was something that
Was a big
was
part.
known. Yes, it would have been presented in court and was probably a big part of the jury deliberations.
He's a good man.